Javokhir Sindarov has been the find of this tournament. At the Weissenhaus Freestyle Chess Grand Slam Tour 2025, he has managed to beat Hikaru Nakamura, then taken Fabiano Caruana to the Armageddon, and now is taking on Magnus Carlsen. This is going to be an epic clash. Magnus, on the other hand, would have definitely wanted to win this title, but was stopped by Vincent Keimer in the semi-finals when the young German player beat Magnus 1.5-half. Now in this matchup, Magnus would surely want to play his best possible chess. It's time to get ready for the game. Sindarov has a sip of water, so does Magnus, and off we go now. Sindarov plays the pawn to e4. This is a good move which opens up the bishop and also the rook. And Magnus has an option to play like Sicilian with c5. But he adjusts all his pieces. Yeah, pushing the pawn forward would open up the queen and looks like a very interesting idea. Let's see what Magnus chooses, because the first move really gives kind of the flow to the game. Magnus pushes his pawn to e5. So we have the e4, e5 opening here. And will Sindarov play knight to f3? That would be very interesting, very hilarious, because the pieces are no way like the normal chessboard, but they are playing a normal opening, knight f3. Unfortunately, there is no knight to come to c6 now. But he can play the Petrov with knight f6. Magnus being very careful about this position because he wants to ensure, the Petrov, knight f6. He wants to ensure that his bishops are open, and I think that's also the case for Sindarov. He would love to do that, so maybe b3 or b4 does come to mind at some point. Let's see what Javokhir does here. He has 1 hour 27 minutes on the clock, and he plays a4 after 12 minutes of thinking. What a move this is. a4. Why would you play that? Maybe the idea is to activate the queen here, or just to gain space on the queen side. Very interesting. And look, you can see Magnus quite surprised with this move. Goes c6. With this, he opens up the queen. Now, this is a very tough decision for Magnus, because on one hand, he is opening the queen. On the other hand, the bishop is now blocked. And one can say that, sort of theoretically, black has a bad position here. And Sindarov plays b4. A fantastic move, making more space. The queen would love to come to b3 to attack the f7 pawn. He plays his queen up to c7. Just improving his position slightly. It seems like Magnus is not really interested in huge moves or anything. Just improving his position bit by bit. The queen comes up to b3, keeping an eye on the f7 pawn. Now, if the knight has to remain on h8, defending it, that's a pretty sad job to be doing. So let's see what Magnus now comes up with here. He thinks for a bit and brings his knight to g6. Wow, that is a surprise to me, because now Sindarov can go in and snatch the pawn. And there's no way to trap the queen actually. You can long castle, but my queen can come back. And yes, you are a pawn up here. So shouldn't Sindarov simply go and take that pawn is the big question here. Well, he decides against it and plays rook to b1. Now this is a move that wasn't really expected, but I guess Sindarov was afraid that the b4 pawn was hanging. In fact, that wasn't really a big thing. Like if you take on f7 and he took on b4, then g7 would hang. So perhaps worrying about that was not really a great idea. d5 by Magnus, now striking in the center and saying to Sindarov, you missed your chance to take that pawn. It's a good move right in the center. And Javokhir plays his knight to g3. because after pawn takes pawn, you can take back with the knight, or you can even go knight g5, putting pressure here and here. Magnus calmly long castles here and gets his rooks into the center of the board. That's beautiful rooks there. The bishop is well placed, the knights are well placed. The only piece that's struggling is the bishop. And Javokhir plays his bishop to d3, a move that might be questionable because you can jump in with the knight here. Knight to f4, attacking the bishop and the pawn. Will Magnus do that? Knight f4. No, he first takes on e4. He takes the pawn in the center of the board. And Sindarov goes and takes it. Knight takes e4. And now the knight jumps into f4. He's attacking the bishop here and the pawn. Takes on f6. And Magnus takes back. G takes f6. Bishop check. And in some ways the position is stabilizing a bit. You can see here White's bishops are pretty active. But on the other hand, the bishop on a8 is pretty blocked. So he now plays bishop h3. No, he plays g3. That's more logical. Yeah, because bishop h3 would have just spoiled the structure. So g3 attacking the knight here. The knight comes back to d5. And he's attacking the pawn here on b4. So maybe queen c4 is a move. Logical one. But Sindarov, short castles. Wow, he sacrifices a pawn because he realizes that his queen and rook are aimed against the king. So if Magnus is bold enough to take the pawn, he might face trouble. Magnus takes it. Regardless of that, he's not afraid. This is getting very sharp and intense. But one of the things that Magnus would love to do is just get this bishop rolling down the long diagonal. Will Sindarov be able to stop it? It seems like he has a big idea up his sleeves. d4. And the point being that if you take e takes d4, bishop takes d4. Already the bishop is very well positioned right into the center of the board. Looks very strong. But Magnus has a killer blow here. And it revolves around activating the bishop on a8. Can you find it? Yes, Magnus does. c5 on the board. Fantastic move. Because if you play d takes c5, I'll take with the bishop and then b6. Opening up my two bishops against the king. If you play d takes e5, and this is what Sindarov was banking on, well, this is the problem now. Magnus does not recapture the pawn in the center. He's going to simply push his b pawn, b6. Fantastic move, opening up the bishop, and also the queen can come up ahead to put pressure here. And that looks very strong. Rook d1 played to trade off the rooks. And you have to be a bit careful here. Magnus plays queen to c6. Great move. He's moving the pieces very carefully because there could be some huge tactics. Sindarov takes it and he has this amazing tactical idea. If you take here, bishop e5 check, and suddenly the king is mated here and you are in trouble. King can't come up, rook can't take this because d8 is hanging. But look at Magnus's move. I simply love it. Bishop b7. He's making a square for the king on a8. That's how simple it is. Bishop g4 to protect the knight. Now white is material up. He's a pawn up. But his position looks dangerous and difficult. Magnus finds a great move. c4. The queen really is running out of squares actually. It doesn't have too many squares. It can go to c3 or a3, maybe a3. There's already deadly disco here. So Sindarov wants to move the queen. Now plays it to c3. And now what Magnus can do is just defend his knight with a5. Yes, plays it. Pawn to a5, defending the knight. The bishop is here defending the knight. Rook takes rook, rook takes rook, taken. And you can see all black pieces doing incredible job, while the white pieces are a bit confused. Queen e5 check. Well, the problem with bishop d6 could well be that he'll just offer a trade for the queens. But here king a7 is the correct move. If you now try to offer trade of queens, I simply decline it. I come in here, attack your bishop because that's defending the very important knight. After bishop h5, there is bishop c5, queen c2 is hanging. Black is in the driver's seat. So he goes queen f5 now. Sindarov, he moves his queen here. And Magnus brings his bishop into the game. This is a very, very strong bishop here on c5 square. Bishop to c3. And you play knight to c2. It takes the pawn on c2. Very, very interesting move, because if you play queen to c2, there is rook d3 with the idea of taking here and also pressure here. You can't be defending both. Very nice move. And rook c1 played here by Sindarov. Well, there are many ways to win, but this move, knight e3, wow, what a move here by Magnus. He's unleashing all the tactics here. There's a fork, you have to take the knight. He takes it. And now bishop e3 check, attacking the rook on c1. King comes up to g2. Takes on c1. And king h3. Sindarov trying to run away with his king here, but he's already material down and his position is a wreck. Magnus comes in with the rook, threatening the c3 bishop, also threatening the f3 knight, bishop d4, and a small trick here, by the way, queen a5 check if you are careless. Although, like, let's say rook f3, bishop f3, queen f3, even this should win, queen a5, but Magnus just remains super careful, brings his queen up to d5 and says, if you trade, I'm simply winning. And Javokhir now has no counterplay. He resigns there. Magnus Carlsen wins a beautiful game. In fact, what I really loved in this game is how Magnus activated each and every piece of his before playing. And that was, I think, quite admirable. And this is why he's managed to win an important game. Now Sindarov will have to strike back tomorrow with the black pieces. Not going to be easy, but the youngster will try to give it his all.